Welcome to the IO Edge, where industrial organizational psychology meets the fast-paced world of modern HR. I'm your host, Dr. Jacqueline Minor. This podcast is dedicated to HR professionals, managers, and IO psychologists looking to lead with insight, strategy, and confidence. Whether you're an HR professional looking to level up or an IO psych grad wondering where you fit in the business world, this podcast gives you the tools and insight to lead with purpose. On today's podcast, we will discuss the future of work is human, the dawn of a new workforce. So I'm joined today by Dr. Jeremy Lucabaugh, who is an industrial organizational psychology consultant, executive coach, and the founder of SEBOC, the Society of Evidence-Based Organizational Consulting. With over 20 years of experience across industries from biotech to space tech, Dr. Lucabaugh brings science-backed strategies to leadership, communication, and organizational development. He's also the host of the #1 IO psychology podcast, Work Cookie. Welcome, Dr. Lucabaugh.
Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody.
All right. So what we're going to do, Dr. Lucabaugh, we're just going to dive right into some questions. So first question is, can you share what inspired you to found SEBOC and how your journey in IO psychology began?
SEBOC was one of those, at the time, fly by the seat of the pants kind of thing. We were actually at a consortium during the PhD program, and for some reason, my mind just went to, if we're supposed to be able to make the organizations in the workplace better, what would happen if we got a bunch of IOs together as a group? So that's how it all started. And we've gone through several iterations to make it where it is today, which is very much aligned with the purpose. And really the whole idea is, how do we give back and give people what we did not have when we were trying to come into the field years and years ago? And one of the main thing was community. And I just spoke with one of a new member today, and she said, the community, without me mentioning that, she said, the community is one of the main things that drew me to it. Seemed like your organization was very welcoming, et cetera. And I told her, we're a close-knit group of many, and we really strive for that community and belonging, because that's what it's all about. There's so much going on with the field of IO, and there are so many people that are having a tough time breaking into the field or changing careers, getting into IO, primarily because of what we all know, which is a lack of recognition of what the brand of IO, what IO psychologists do. There's been a huge influx of schools that are now having advanced degrees that, we're talking 10, 20, 30 fold increase in universities that offer that. So now you have all these people that are hungry. I love psych. I love business. And they want to combine that. And it's tough to break into the field because the job market has just not opened up to that yet. So we provide that community, that belonging, those opportunities for self-starters, the networking opportunities. We have very little red tape in the organization. If somebody has an idea, instead of no, it's usually, how can we do it? So really, it's all about getting that community to give everyone a sense of momentum, which is what we need, and it's what the field needs. Right. Did I miss a question in there? I might have answered only one.
Yeah, you answered the question, because it's one of those things where when you have an idea, it's like, do you move forward with the idea? Do you implement it? And it kind of goes into what prompted you and other SEBOC members to publish the white paper, The Dawn of a New Workforce, the Science of Creative Problem Solving, Building Influence and Collaboration. I, too, am a member of SEBOC. And for me, putting together the white paper with other IOs that are part of the SEBOC family was very moving for me, because I've worked in HR for over 2 decades. And just kind of how you were mentioning how people can break into the field of IO or where they fit has always been something at the forefront of my brain, because I do feel like HR and IO are a good marriage. The prompting of the white paper was something that, I know others on the SEBOC platform were eager to do. Tell me a little bit more about the white paper. How can we get access to read about the dawn of a new workforce?
Yeah, and isn't it crazy? Because we worked on it together. You were there. What goes into an 11-page paper? How long? How many meetings? How many? Oh my gosh, it's so crazy. But again, as IOs, normally we're pretty specific. Things have to be right. So we made sure we did the research and the backing. That was near the height of the pandemic, and I think a lot of that was you had this weird crux of everything where you had AI, you had automation coming in, you had everyone, virtual meetings. So it's all right. What are going to be the biggest things, the biggest drivers from 20? Maybe it was 2022 and beyond. I can't remember exactly the year.
Right.
And here we're in the beyond part, and it still holds true because there is a lot that IO can do to augment what human resources does. And there's a big misconception about what's IO versus what's HR. And then I'm going to go back to what I mentioned earlier about people in IO who are jumping into the field. They might get stuck in what we call the HR trap, working in these HR jobs that are great for people who love HR, looking at keeping the company out of hot water, looking at the logistical operations, all these other things that are very, very important, but not exactly applying the IO skills. So there's different things that we can do to work together, not replace, not take over, but really augment and have this very workable relationship with those in human resources to provide a support system and also add that evidence-based nature of it, the scientific backing, and look at things through really what we call an IO lens, which is that mesh between psychological concepts and business practices and what could be better.
I know. It just makes my brain tingle. It's just like, so I think the other thing too, when we looked at doing or constructing the white paper, as you said, it came during the time or up on the heels of COVID. So we were looking at the different trends that were going on within HR, some of the struggles and challenges that were going to be faced because of the pandemic. So I know in the white paper we did list some basically what IO psychology is, for one, to make sure that there was a differentiation between HR and IO and how to utilize IOs in a way that could help with efficiency in the workplace, especially during time of hybrid environments and employee engagement or employee experience. So there were several trends listed as well as how IOs could really, as you said, connect with the HR professionals and even C-suite.
Yeah, we even provided a long-term roadmap there
Mhm.
from, going all the way from starting out with this idea of disruption and then dialogue, like leading this discovery process to involve HR and other stakeholders to look at like what are the different gaps? What are the things that evidence-based strategies would help that we could actually drive that effectiveness? And then moving towards, all right, what's the path forward? What's the exact plan? And then here's really here's the execution part of it. And here's how we can work together to meet the goals and the outcomes.
Okay. So if I wanted to share or direct someone to the white paper, where would we need?
So on the SEBOC, it's seboc.com. There's a resources tab. And I think under the resources tab, there's a tab that says shop. And there you can get a variety of the digital downloads we have available. It's a free download.
Okay, cool. That was fun. I think that was probably a 2 or 3 month labor of love project for all of us. So it was a great project. Moving forward with evidence based strategy in action. So, what does pulling the story out of data look like in practice?
Pulling the story out of data. So when you look at data, it tells a story. There's usually a story there. And with
Mhm.
every story, you've got characters, you have twists, you have underlying themes. There's all kinds of things there. And part of, how do we communicate our value for one? And part of that is taking like looking at the data and looking at that in terms of the story it's telling. There was one, there's I might have another one, but I've got an example of one part that it looks like there. I was in charge of many years ago. I was in charge of the company-wide employee engagement survey process for I don't know what we had at the time, like 8,000 people in the company. And part of it was looking at that data department-wise, and we had 10 many departments, but being able to take and say, here's what is going on in the department, and trying to, whenever you tell a story, whenever you go with this, to have a shared vision and try to visualize, you got to make it, picture this, the leaves are
Right.
falling in the crispy autumn. You got like the auburn leaves. So you got to tell a story in a way that captivates somebody, but also in a way that makes sense to them. Again, it always goes
Right.
back to what's in it for them. So you might be able to tell a story in terms of, here's what the data shows based on, in this particular thing, engagement, and picture this. What happens if nothing changes? What does it look like? What happens with your customer service aspect, your bookings, for example? But then you can also take and find these underlying concepts, because let's face it, all surveys aren't perfect and all survey companies aren't perfect. I realized that there was let's call it a glitch in the system, where some of the options that were given for employees when they were taking the survey, they would choose like what would help with the lack of engagement, what would help build momentum, et cetera. And team building was one of the things that was mostly picked for this one thing. And as I looked further and further into the data, I realized, because then you look at the qualitative comments, all the comments, the written comments that people put in, and
Right.
nothing pointed to team building. What it did point to was appreciation, like personal appreciation, team
Okay.
appreciation. And we know that appreciation is different than team building. Team building is usually a waste of time if not done very appropriately. I'll leave it at that for now. But there was no option for team appreciation. So part of that storytelling is looking into that and being able to have that conversation with people about what's happening now, visualize what's actually going on with these particular circumstances, these types of interactions, this type of productivity, efficiency. And what does that point to? And then what would happen if employees, their appreciation funny bone, I guess it would be the appreciation bone, if their appreciation bone was tickled, rather than, here, I'm going to go do a team building, I'm going to do go-karts or go with everybody for ice cream and hang out with my best friend anyway and not talk to anyone else, and et
Right.
cetera, et cetera. So there's different ways that you can really start to get people to visualize and see the movie that you have as an IO psychologist playing in your head. And quite frankly, I'll say even more importantly, it's how do we understand the movie that other people have playing in their head about what their experience is, what their fears are, what their hesitations are, and really go into that. Because again, what we want doesn't matter. It's all about the other person and what their perspective is.
Right.
And I'll even go, Jacqueline, I never go on a tangent, but I'm going to go on one now.
Hey, it's okay.
But one thing that's important, and when you look at this storytelling, anytime you're going to interact with anyone, for example, like anytime, if it's a job interview, if it's a tough conversation at home or with an employee or with a leader, and you have to look at some data, I call it the 1K perspective. Take a piece of paper, write down 1,000 words or just a full piece of paper of everything you can from their perspective. What are their fears? What are their hesitations? What are they looking forward to? What are they thinking on the way to the work? What are they feeling on the way to the work? What are their aspirations? What catch them up? What challenges do they face? What are their hobbies? And you can get specific based on a specific scenario if you want. But when you go into a conversation like that, especially when you've got to say, all right, here's some data and we've got good news and we've got bad news, all of a sudden you can speak to their fears, their hesitations, etc. Now, some people might say right now, well, you're making assumptions and we know what the assumptions rule is. I say throw that out. It's perfectly okay to make assumptions. People will correct you, and you actually want that. So if you make an assumption and say, here's the data, as you're looking at this, I can tell that it seems like you're quiet and you're processing this. You're hesitant because you've got to bring this to your boss and you're wondering how to share with your boss some of this not so good
Right.
news. That's okay to say, because they might say, no, 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 I'm quiet because I'm just glad the results aren't as bad as I thought. They'll correct you, but that's a good
Right,
thing to do. People want
right,
to feel heard and understood. And if
right.
you're making an attempt to make them feel heard and understood without them even having to say a word, that can be very powerful. So again, just a couple of things that can be added in with the communication aspect of, here we've got this data. What are we going to do with it, and how do we communicate it?
Yeah, it's almost like you're having to make it sexy,
Yeah.
telling the story, because especially if you're dealing with C-suite, they just sometimes they may not, understand or feel like, oh my gosh, this is going to be like watching paint dry. So if we can spice it up a bit, as you said, speaking their language. So if you're going in talking to a CFO, numbers is his thing. Always hitting the numbers with the CFOs, get their attention. So awesome. So as we look at building the workforce of tomorrow, so what skills will define the next generation of leaders in your opinion?
Just because I see a lot of this, I coach with a lot of different organizations and a lot of different fields. A lot of it comes down to, like, what are the main things? It's delegation, huge, time management, decision making, and overall communication. I'll let you ask me a follow up question because I just gave you four.
So a follow-up question is, so how can organizations foster a culture of innovation and psychological safety? So you
Oh,
listed some really good points about leaders, but how are we going to foster that culture of innovation and psychological safety?
so somebody out there is going to prove me wrong on the how I pronounce something. Or Kuzes and Posner. So they wrote the Leadership Challenge, which is now, and probably it's like 11th or 13th edition. They've done 50 plus years of research. They also created the LPI, the Leadership Practices Inventory. And when you look at innovation, what is innovation? Part of it is risk taking. And one of the five universal qualities around the globe that people look for are encourage risk taking. But that also goes back to communication, like I mentioned before, and decision making, and also the delegation part as well. So that's one of the main things, is that in addition to, I'm not going to call it cross training, but broadening the scope of ideas. And how do you broaden the scope of ideas? You talk to people in other departments. You start to have, maybe it's team buildings, maybe it's not, but there's a way to get people together with other people of different mindsets. Because oftentimes it's scary when you look at innovation, because somebody's butt's always on the line, and that can
That's
be pretty scary. So think tanks are good. You can have these, I forget what I used to call them, SLT, strategic leadership teams, where you get random people from every part of the company. Like you get a server, you get one of the maintenance directors, you get a VP, you get a mid-level manager, you get an admin, but you get all these people together on this strategic leadership team, because they're really diverse in terms of job level, focus, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how you can start to solve these really difficult challenges. There's this company I consulted with a while back. It was a large construction company. And when they couldn't figure out something, usually had to do with logistics, they would call in the admins, all of the admins, basically anyone who was there. They
right.
would pull them out of the nooks and crannies of the office and get their take. And one time, one of the admins said, and it had to do with a grandmother's recipe, but somehow I can't remember the details. She solved this huge problem for the company because she was able to relate it. But that's how you can, with this whole innovation, is you encourage risk taking with decision making, but make sure, of course, you have the communication lines in check. But really get different people involved, get people to open up, and always know that if somebody shoots out an idea, maybe that's not the idea. Maybe that's one a little too crazy, but usually it's one or two steps back where you get an idea that's absolutely feasible. I usually tell people, in a perfect world, how would you innovate to solve this challenge or to attack this opportunity? You have unlimited resources, et cetera. and they'll say it, and it's usually not going to happen. But just take one step back. Maybe it will. One step back. Usually it takes two steps back, and all of a sudden we've got some kind of a feasible idea that can move forward.
Okay. So really, as they say, the visionary has it in play. Like, this is the vision. This is the way. But you have to have those persons who are able to initiate or implement the vision. Having that think tank, that was one of the things that just crossed my mind before you said it. Having think tanks in all levels of leadership, frontline employees, because I can tell you this, frontline employees, they have all of the nitty gritty details of things, and they could straight away kind of tell you what is working and what is not working because they physically see it and deal with it daily. So think tanks involving all levels of leadership and employees is a great idea. And
They're
then
the
just
closest referee. Yeah.
mentioning too that this is a safe space, that people can be creative and bring ideas, and we'll throw it at the wall and see what sticks. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that. So, what role does the SEBOC community play in shaping the future of work? So, what do you feel that the community, the SEBOC community, could do to play a major role in shaping the future?
One thing we've got, it's such a great community. We've got some, and I call it a close knit group of many because it really is. People just start to know each other in a way that it's just never happened in this field, where you're talking to one person and you can mention someone else's name without even having to say, do you know this person? And it is a great community. One thing is really bringing the brand of IO, not even bringing the brand, helping to define the brand of IO and get it out there so that we no longer face the, have you ever heard of industrial organizational psychology? Nope. What is that? Therapy in the workplace? And you know it's not. But
Right.
one thing is helping to define it. And partly it's all right, you've got sports psychology, you've got jury psychology, you've got marketing, which is what, 98% psychology. It's just a
Mhm.
different type of psychology in the workplace. It's in the US anyway. It's not therapy. It's not counseling. We don't get into any of that at the clinical side. But part of it is that brand awareness because a lot of our community are very astute. They come from a lot of different backgrounds, have a lot of different skills. I mean, we've got people who go from being an attorney and now they're switching into IO. A lot of
Mhm.
people that have been in the military have a great set of diverse skill sets and they're getting into the IO field. You got people who are social media experts getting into the IO field. I mean, you name it, I've probably seen it in terms of the draw that the field has. So I would say, what part does the community play in the and how IO is going to progress? A lot of it has to do with confidence and community. That confidence comes with the community aspect of it, taking care of each other and really being there as comrades and confidence and building each other up till everyone gets to that coveted point of strategic advisor with a client or a company.
Okay. So, really, IOs are not always just doing the research or in research. So, say for me, I'm actually a hybrid. So, I work in HR, but I also have an IO lens, which I feel like is a great tool to have because with employee relations, we're always faced with, analyzing or investigating issues that leaders may have with people with low performance or behavior. So for me, I have found that because of the state of the world or where we are, there is a lot of mental health crisis going on right now where a lot of people do not feel psychologically safe at work. So being able to help with that IO lens to say, hey, have we ever thought, is there something else going on besides, that could be pointing toward their decline in performance, something at home or some challenges? And once we start asking the right questions, then that answer light bulb goes off like, oh my gosh, we didn't realize that such and such was dealing with the loss of a family member, for instance, which is the decline in their performance. So I try to, educate leaders a lot to kind of ask other questions or try to really think about what could be causing the low engagement. Healthcare field is very prone for burnout and stress. So those are other things that we have to be conscious of in our workspaces. So that's something that we really can help our HR partners, our counterparts, to say, are we asking the right questions? Do we need to kind of look deeper here to see if there are other factors that are influencing behavior? So, as IOs, we are tasked with analyzing and resolving complex workplace issues. So, this is one of those things where we lean in, at least for me, and what I'm doing now is leaning in with leaders to really understand, are there other complexities that we don't physically see on the surface? So, but I like the idea of the community, the feel of CBOC. Are you guys still doing the happy hours? Those are always fun. Are you guys still engaging in the happy hours?
Yep, we have expert happy hours. We're going to introduce a mixture of our Pathfinder member plus expert member. We're going to do a combined mixer happy hour, I think starting in August. So we're going to do that. We have different kinds of regional events, and then the live recording of the work cookie podcast that anyone can pop in and contribute. Going back to what you said about the questions, that's one of the biggest part is going in with no judgment and just being extremely curious. Work alone, just tasks, just the work tasks that we have to do. They're hard enough. And then you introduce people, and oh my goodness. So you got this compounding effect going on. But
Right.
that's how, anyone who's in a HRIO leadership position can be helpful, is to go in and really go in with a sense of non-judgment and just curiosity,
Hmm.
asking those really good questions to find out if, okay, there's a performance issue, or even if someone's being coached for a low stakes situation, maybe it's leadership development coaching, but there's a lot of, maybe they're facing burnout. It's about being astute enough to ask the right questions to see what the potential derailers are or could be, and address the fundamental challenge so that the progress can actually be made. So I love that questioning aspect.
Awesome. So, one last question. What is one book every IO professional should read?
Book, every IO. There's a book, I can't think of the author. It's called The Road Less Stupid. It is a phenomenal book about decision making, being specific, execution, and it can help out in corporate life, entrepreneur life, personal life. It's all about, before making decisions, given plenty of thinking time and asking these probing questions about whatever the decision might be. And if challenges are being faced, it's real easy. Do this all the time in coaching, taking what the challenge is and trying to take all that chaos and whittle it down into one problem statement. And then from that, you can get a problem question. And now that you have a question, now you have something to answer. And that answer is how you solve that particular challenge. So there's a lot of that in the book as well. And there's a lot of also specifics about even running effective team meetings and getting away from all right, so you're going to work on that and we might have something to go off of later. It being really specific. All right, here's our objective at the moment. You've decided to work on this, and it sounds like your deadline is going to be Thursday at 5 p.m. And with that deliverable, we're going to get X, Y, and Z. And over here, what you're going to do with that is you're going to turn that into, it's very, very specific, and eliminating that, well, maybe, I don't know,
Right.
guesswork, and allowing us to be super, super efficient, which can and go back to burnout, can reduce burnout because you're making more progress with less mental energy, for one. It's a good
Right.
book.
Okay.
The
Well,
Road Less Stupid. That's the
The
book. Yeah.
Road Less
It's fun
Stupid.
to say.
I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to check that book out. But Dr. Lucabaugh, Jeremy, my friend, I really appreciate you coming on to the show, educating us about SEBOC, your, your executive coaching and all of the other wonderful inventions and businesses that you have. So I really appreciate you joining the show. How can someone reach you if they wanted to contact you?
I'm on LinkedIn and turnboot.com, turnboot.com, and then SEBOC, SEBOC.com. Those are two websites that'll get you to me.
All right. Dr. Lucabaugh, thank you so much. This
Thank you.
episode of the IO Edge was brought to you by Turnboot, Organizational Excellence, assisting and driving organizations to excellence with the science-based principles of industrial organizational psychology. Learn more at turnboot.com. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. On our next episode, we will explore bias in the hiring process, what IO research tells us. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Spotify to stay connected to the conversation at the intersection of psychology, business, and human resources. I'm Dr. Jacqueline Minor. I'll see you soon.